Hello everyone, Harmony Williams here. It has been a long while, hasn't it, since we actually posted a video. Not terribly long since we've tried, filming one, but because of my wrists, I just haven't been able to edit any of them. I don't really see that changing, but my lovely cameraman is going to be editing this one up, so I get to go nuts, do whatever I want. Oh yeah, he told me not to script this, so he gets to have fun cutting this all together. So one of the major things that people are asking me, because the last thing that I wound up posting, I think in my newsletter, was a health update. I have a lot of news actually, I think, since the last time I posted one of these videos. The bad news is that I've had yet another specialist tell me that they don't know why I feel pain. I'm waiting on one more specialist for chronic pain, so in a couple months I'll get that same answer probably. In the meantime, I've started on some new medication that helps a little bit. Usually day to day I'm feeling a little bit better, but I do still get flare-ups, which is unfortunate. And yeah, otherwise my health is pretty well the same. Is it impacting writing? Yes. It's impacting social media too. You may have noticed that I'm kind of on and off depending on how I'm feeling, and that's going to continue for the rest of 2020 for sure. Well, I can't rub your belly the entire time. I'm such a sucker. So what have I been writing? Well, the first book that I wound up dictating after my wrists went, that was a book that was a long time in editing, but it is coming out later this year. It's called The Price of Temptation. I finally finished editing it up for my publisher, and it's on the release schedule, and I will do another video telling you all about that book. In the meantime, I actually don't have a book under deadline for the first time in several years, and my muse has gone a little crazy. It's just become passion project after passion project. I had enough wrists to actually sit down with a book that I had written before my wrists went. This book was a historical mystery called Speak Not of Murder. I've talked about it before, several years ago when I initially wrote it. This is obviously a book that means a lot to me because I wrote 120,000 words in 1 month. I actually wrote it only during the write-ins of National Novel Writing Month because I wanted to prove something to myself. But this book was just so fun to write. I had the initial concept actually while I was up in Edinburgh in the Elephant Cafe. It was just such a lovely ambiance, and I started outlining it up there. And while I was in the UK, I spent several weeks in Newcastle upon Tyne, where this book is located. Obviously not modern day, it's located in the early Victorian period. But I was able to go to a lot of the places that I am mentioning in this book, and I have a bunch of other various research details that I did while I was up there. It was just such a wonderful experience. And now I finally edited it. It is off with my beta reader. I meant to do that slowly, but when I started, I just couldn't stop, and I ended up putting myself into a flare-up again, but it was totally worth it. Since then, I have been working on various other passion projects. These are just projects that I am playing with because I feel like I really need to write these books at this time. My serial, if you haven't read it already, is up on my website. I will link it in the description. It is basically a combination of all of the books of my heart. I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy, especially this year. For escapism, I just can't touch anything that's remotely like real life. So I've been reading a lot of fantasy, and I've been wanting to segue my writing into something that has more fantasy elements, and this serial is the thing that does it. Right now I've got two separate timelines that are going on with two separate characters. The serial is called The Sparks of Magic, and it is about four sisters, the Sparks sisters, all of which have a unique magical ability. One of the main strings is Cassandra's tale. Cassandra is a matchmaker who is able to use her magical powers to find the one person who is meant to be with each other, so she matches her clients based on her magic. And she happens to get face-to-face with a bit of a rake who came to her on a dare to ask her to find him a wife. It turns out that the only love match in his life is her, and she's just not having it. The other string that I am writing in this serial is less of a romance and more of a mystery. We have Diana, who has the ability to see visions of the past whenever she touches an object. So her story revolves around this mysterious object that comes into her possession, and it is the one object that she can't read because it just completely overwhelms her magic and knocks her out. And that is concerning enough in itself, but just before that happens, a mysterious woman shows up at her shop and asks her after this object. So right now, Diana is embroiled in this mystery, trying to figure out who this woman is, why she wants this powerful magical object, and why this object ended up in her shop without her knowing about it. There will be more threads as the serial goes on. I still have two more sisters. I know I'm definitely going to do something with the oldest sister, Phoebe, who uses her magic to make perfumes and potions. I'm not entirely sure if I'll be doing something with Melody, mostly because Melody is something of a self-insert. But if you want to read about bookish Melody, she is in every single thread. She's a huge part of the glue that holds everybody together in this family. Just because. The one project that I probably shouldn't be writing, because it is not even close to anything that I usually write, but that I have now written 2 books in the series for, is a futuristic urban fantasy that features a demigoddess in a wheelchair and her trans werewolf boyfriend as they solve crime in an AI-controlled utopia. It is so much fun to write. I don't know, I just really need to write this, especially because I'm giving her my disability, and it's just very cathartic to see her in a position of power where she's able to solve these crimes and save herself and her boyfriend at times. So I'm having fun with that. I don't know if I'll ever do anything with it other than write it, but it is definitely carrying me through all of these flare-ups this year, for sure. Last year, around this time, I started my vlogging journey when I participated in the Reading Rush for the first time. The Reading Rush is coming back around. It's from July 20th to 26th this year. I had mixed feelings about it at first. First of all, because as much as I would love to jump in with all of the video prompts that are sure to come out, I just don't think that my wrists will be able to handle that. And secondly, because I've been writing so much that I haven't been reading that much over the past month. Don't tell anybody. But when the prompts came out, I got super excited about it, and I've already chosen my TBR, which I might actually stick to this year. You never know. So for those of you who don't know what the prompts are, they are: read a book with a cover that matches your birthstone, read a book that starts with the word the, read a book that inspired a movie you've seen, read the first book you touch, read a book entirely outside of your house, read a genre that you want to read more of, and read a book that takes place on a different continent than you. So I've chosen a conservative 4 books this year. Last year, I believe I did 7, and it was just too much. I was so burnt out of reading by the time I finished, and that's just not the feeling that I want to have when I'm reading. So I chose 4 books. The first one, for the cover that matches my birthstone, and also a genre that I want to read more of, is a poetry collection by Tracy K. Smith called Life on Mars. My birthstone is garnet. This has a lovely red hued cover, and I always mean to read more poetry, and I never, ever, ever do. So this sounds like the perfect time. Poetry collections are also very short, which means that I have a good chance of being able to read this outside of my house without trying too hard and ignoring the dog, because let's face it, he can't come with me. Be very sad. The other option for reading a book outside of my house is a novella that I have had on my radar for most of the year. It just came out last month, and it's called The Order of the Pure Moon Reflected in Water by Zen Cho. I love Zen Cho. I have read other short stories by her, and I am looking forward to this one for sure. It's supposed to be a found family, wuxia type novella, and it just sounds incredible. For the book that inspired a movie I've seen, this one was tough, but I decided to go with one of the animes that I have watched. Kemono no Sojo Eren is an anime that is based off of a novel, not a manga, which is not usual for most animes. And it has been translated into English. It's called The Beast Player by Naoko Unahashi, and I am looking forward to seeing how that holds up to the anime. And the last one that I am going to read is a nonfiction that takes place on a different continent than me. It counts. It's called Inglorious Empire by Sashi Tharoor, and it is about the British occupation of India, and I'm looking forward to getting an Indian perspective on that. I just really don't care what white people have to say about it anymore. Now you'll notice that I haven't talked about one of the prompts, which is read the first book you touch. All of these are audiobooks because of my wrists, so I can't really touch any of them. So what I'm going to do on the first day, I'm going to cut up this nice card that has all 4 options. I'm going to fold them, mix them around, and then choose one, and whichever one I choose, that's the one I start with that day. With Black Lives Matter deservedly taking center stage, and I hope that continues for a while, I was so excited to see the movement to blackout bestseller lists. I feel like there are so many amazing books by Black creators that people just ignore or people just don't know about. So I made a list of my favorite books by Black creators on my Twitter. I will link that as well. It's a bit of an old thread, but definitely take a look and buy them, read them. They're fantastic. This is also a great time for people to really look into themselves and dismantle white supremacy, and there are some incredible books that can help you do that, and I would like to recommend some of them right now. For the Canadians, Policing Black Lives by Robin Maynard is definitely eye-opening as to the level of police brutality that happens in Canada. I feel like the main thing that Canadians have as a mindset is that we are not as bad with racism as, for instance, the States. And I feel like we should not be looking at other countries while racism still exists in our country. And this book definitely helps, and it helped me to reframe the way that I'm thinking about how my country treats people of color. Another book that I've read this year and really enjoyed was So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijoma Olu. And I found that this was a very powerful book. I highly recommend it. For those of you who want to read more things like that, I'm currently reading Why I No Longer Talk to White People About Race by Reni Eddo-Lodge, and that is another very powerful book that I highly recommend. But I think that my primary recommendation right now is not only a book that shares the perspective of people of color, which is what a lot of these books do, but a book that challenges you to look inside yourself I think if you haven't already, you should pick up Me and White Supremacy by Layla F. Saad. It is a challenging book. It is a series of lessons for you to go through with journal prompts to really examine how deeply ingrained white supremacy is in your psyche and in your life in ways that you didn't even know about. Each of these lessons is very instructional, and it also helps you to dismantle a lot of things that you just might have ignored. It makes me uncomfortable. It makes me exhausted after going through a lesson, and that's how I know that it's very important work that I'm doing every time I go through one of these lessons. I highly recommend that you pick up this book, that you take the time, that you do the work, that you do it at your own pace, and really examine the way white supremacy has infused your life from the ground up so that we can finally tear it down and bring equality to everybody. Thank you for joining me for another video newsletter. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them and I will answer them whenever I have the wrists. And I hope that you have a fantastic reading month. Until next time.